Hey there, how's it going? Long time no see. Welcome back to Listen Lissa. Nice to see you. Have you ever had the unpleasant experience of someone doing something to you that is not very nice and they've hurt your feelings? Okay, they've done something to you that's very blatantly wrong in your book and they're just not getting it. They're just not getting why that is hurting you, or they're minimizing it. That's like one of the most infuriating situations that we can run into as humans. And what's one way that we typically will resort to try to help them understand? We will probably try to invoke some type of empathy out of them, right? Because we want them to put themselves in our shoes. Because I'm a human being, they're a human being. We all pretty much experience the same range of emotions that human beings tend to feel during their lifetime, and we all feel them at different times for some of the most similar situations. And we find that it's very nuanced in a lot of ways, but in general, if you can feel a certain way when you go through something, if that action or being treated like that, talked to like that, someone behaves like that towards you, someone does something like this towards you, if it makes you feel this way, however it makes you feel, you can probably bet that that's going to be very similar to how it would make someone else feel if you did that to them, okay? We all understand that for the most part, right? Okay, so how does it feel when you say to someone,
well, how would you like it if I did that to you?
And then, by some loophole of nature, by some weird subsection of the book of life, they throw out at you,
that's not the same thing. You can't compare that. It's not the same that way. That's not the same thing. We can't compare.
Okay, for example, let's say that two drivers are out on the road. One of those drivers is looking at their phone, they're not paying attention, they run a red light, okay? Speed right into the middle of the intersection, and they run right into a car, and they cause a collision. Let's say they say, your insurance company is responsible.
You were not looking when you're driving, and you are at fault for this accident, so you will be paying for all of the damages. And tisk, 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 it's all on you.
Okay, and then let's say the next day, by some freakish coincidence, that car that they hit, they're on their phone and they're going through the intersection and they didn't look and they run into the other person. And then the original car says,
okay, now you ran into me. You ran the red light. You weren't looking. And so you need to do the same thing.
and they say,
Well, that's not the same. That's not the same thing.
and then you
Say, why?
and then they say,
Oh, well, because I have a Toyota and you have a Honda. So it's not the same. It's just not the same.
Huh?
does that make any kind of sense to you? Just know your insurance company and you're trying to figure out how in the world this can be legal, that they can say it's not the same. And they start telling you all the reasons why.
Well, when you have a Honda, they're more likely to cause accidents. Hondas, they're not as good of a car, and if you're negligent when you're driving them, that's usually what causes the accident. But usually if a Toyota crashes, it's probably because there's something on the exterior that happened. It's usually not because of the driver. Yeah, it's not the same.
Are you buying this? No! Does that not sound ridiculous to you? A driver gets behind the wheel of a car. It shouldn't matter what car they're driving. If they are in the same type of an accident, and whoever causes the accident should have to pay. It shouldn't matter what car they're driving. Okay? So, I don't know if you've guessed where I'm going with this yet, but where do we hear this? Where do we hear this? Today, I want to discuss a certain claim that is made by a certain type of person, and I really have long since avoided talking about this topic, but in today's political climate and with a lot of stuff that's been going on the past few years, I feel like it's gotten so unreasonably out of line that I would be doing a disservice not to give my take on it and do research on it. A few things I need to hammer out and make clear right at the beginning of this video, and this will be to span throughout the entire video, okay? Number one, men. Men. That's all I have to say. No, I'm just kidding. Ha! Men, I love you, okay? I love men. So I just want to really get that out of the way and be crystal clear on how I feel about men overall. If we're just talking about men in general, I love you, men, okay? I love my male viewers. I appreciate you. This video is not to subtract from your worth in any sort of way. Today, if I refer to men, if I forget to say
This type of man.
just know that I'm telling you right now, I am only speaking in this video about a very particular type of man that I'm going to very much outline, that has these types of beliefs, these types of thoughts, these types of rhetorics, these types of ideologies, and this type of way of speaking and behaving. And then throughout the video, if I forget to say
The type of men that believe this way,
but I'm just maybe telling a hypothetical story to outline the point that I'm talking about, and I might just say
the man.
I'm talking about still this type of man, okay? Never will I ever, never will I ever, with any group really. I don't believe that way. I will never, ever just be referring to an entire group of people just because they belong to a social group and say it's all these people. It will be a specific type who think these things, who believe these ways. So that only applies to those men. So if you're watching this and you're a man and you think this is just as nasty, disgusting, oppressive, and horrible as I do, it is very much my belief that there are many men like that. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. We need you in our corner. We need your voices to be loud and to speak out against men like this as well. Thank you for rallying with us. And we're so happy you're here and we love you. Second part, I want to make sure to mention that the scenario that we're going to be talking about today, I'm only going to be talking about heterosexual couples. So a heterosexual man and heterosexual woman who are in a heterosexual couple of some sort and are doing heterosexual type of things together, okay? That's it. Things that I say today are not going to apply to same-sex couples. It's not going to apply to the LGBTQ community. And when you find out what it's about, you'll be very thankful for that, okay? Not that there's nobody in that community that would believe this way. It's just that I'm only going to be talking about when this claim is made in a couple that is heterosexual, because that's where we see what I'm going to be talking about happening. Also, YouTube is really unclear about what language can be in videos. A lot of times it's kind of up to their discretion. So I just want to err on the side of safety. And so for certain things, I'm going to go ahead and just use a label for them. So if I'm talking about two people getting it on, I'm going to be referring to that as physical intimacy. Okay? So if I'm talking about physical intimacy, I'm talking about knocking the boots. Okay? Got it. I do have quite a few moments where I'm probably going to need to refer to the female anatomy or the male anatomy. And I'm going to refer to the female anatomy as either the female anatomy or I'm going to refer to it as the peach. And I know that's usually the booty on the emoji, but today it's going to be the hoo-ha. Live with it, okay? And then for the male anatomy, I'm going to say the male anatomy or I'm going to say the eggplant, okay? I know it's silly, but like I don't want to deal with it, okay? And lastly, if I am referring to the term that means to have a dislike or form ideas that they gained from prejudices against women and to think you are superior to where a woman is inferior to you, I'm going to refer to that type of a person as a massage gymnast, okay? Or the overall theory, I'm going to call it massage gymnastics, something like that. You know what I'm talking about. Now, if there's any others that I didn't think of right now, I'll just kind of knock them out as we go in the video as they come up. Buckle in, because this can get triggering, this can get infuriating, this can be a tough topic to cover. I feel a little stressed, a little bit, but I'm ready. I'm prepared. I'm absolutely going to start this topic, okay? So don't worry. Let's get into the claim. Let's say the claim very clearly so you know exactly what claim I'm talking about, okay? It goes something like this. When a heterosexual man and a heterosexual woman are engaging in physical intimacy together, and they are either, number one, dating exclusively, they've shared that, or they are in a committed boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, or last but not least, they are married. And in that marriage, they are monogamous. They are not separated. It's not a poly marriage, and it's not an open marriage. In one of those three scenarios, if the man cheating, flat out cheating, or let's include like dating around, like you're dating, you say you're exclusive with that person, but you're actually still dating other people and you're dating them or maybe also being physically intimate with them. Okay, so it's that scenario is not the same as a woman who is in one of those three scenarios and is cheating and or dating other men and being physically intimate with other men. That's the claim. That's the claim, guys. That's what I got for you. Okay, no other parameters around that. That's the claim. It's not the same. It's not the same. Now, all of you watching right now, I know for sure that you've heard this, one. And then two, I know for sure that you have one justification that comes to mind, whether it's the top one that you want to scream out because you're like,
yeah, duh, it's not, and here's why.
Or it's the one that you always hear. And whatever that is, please put it in the comments. So I'd love to hear what you come up with and what different ways you've heard this infuriating claim tried to be justified. So that's what we're doing today. Now, doing that behavior, acting that way, is the exact same thing if a man is doing it to a woman as if a woman is doing it to a man. That it largely is as impactful, as hurtful, as wrong, the same level of a very much betraying, hurtful, and dishonest act that is typically severing of a bond and ruining a relationship. And if you have a family, probably ending that family. There's nothing that is not the same about that, okay? Maybe in certain situations, in the very nuanced situation that each different couple is and each different individual is, maybe there are things that are not the same. That's not what we're saying here. What the people who are making this claim are saying is that across the board, in every situation, and in general, it is not the same when a woman does this as when a man does it, okay? And now, we're going to dive into the many hilarious reasons that they use to defend this, the people who believe this way, okay? Justification, or argument number 1. Anything that comes easy is not of value, is less valuable. Something that is easily obtained is not as valuable. And something that you have to work hard to obtain is of higher value, is worthy of praise. All right? We've heard this before. We've all heard it. Remember, it's not just this principle, which is a pretty sound principle. It applies to a lot of things. We can say that it's a true principle in a lot of ways and does apply, but not here. Okay, so remember, we're thinking of this in the context of the claim I just read. So anyone who would be saying this is essentially saying, because women, and in particular the average woman, can very easily sleep with or be physically intimate with many men without trying very hard. Even a below average woman, as far as the way that they're being rated or judged, I guess, on these parameters by the people who say these things, a below average woman, or even a woman that's not even conventionally attractive, even women that they don't particularly like, even women that may have some very unfavorable qualities about them, is still going to have a much easier time sleeping with many men than the average man will have sleeping with many women. Okay, so it's very difficult for the average man to sleep with many women, they say. It is not the same when a woman cheats as when a man cheats, because it's very easy for a woman to do so, so that's a less valuable act. And she doesn't increase her value, she actually decreases her value, decreases her worth, and it's kind of disgusting when a woman does it because it's easy to do. There's nothing honorable or praiseworthy about it when a woman does it. But when a man does it, it's pretty tough for him to do that. So it's an achievement. It's worthy of some praise. It's worthy of some daps, big ups. Like,
wow, you're the man. You're the man.
Even if you absolutely just don't agree with cheating, which that's my stance, I don't think anybody should be doing this. Okay, but I would never make a claim like this. I would never say that it's okay for one person. It's not the same for the other person. But for the people that are saying that, this is one of the arguments. They would definitely be also applying this to single people. So when a woman just sleeps around in general, it's not the same because that's easy for her to do. So that's just disgusting when she does it. It's lowering her value. It's not getting her praise. It's not getting her respect. But when a man does it, like,
dang,
he's the man, because that was way harder for him to do it. That's how that goes. So let's break this down brick by brick. The first big problem here, what's happening is a misapplication of a principle. So that is when they take a principle that is a sound principle. It can apply to many things. It's being applied in a very off-based way. Okay, so this principle was meant to apply to effort-based achievement. It's meant to apply to something that you obtain, some merit that you reach, some award that you receive, something that you collect. If you come from an area where there's a bunch of fruit trees and you collect fruit, that's going to be less valuable because it was easy than you come from a desert oasis and there's no fruit trees for miles and miles, and that person goes and collects fruit and brings it back to the village. Those fruits are going to be more valuable. The fruits and that act of getting fruit is going to be more valuable than the more easily obtained fruit. Okay? That's what this means, right? It does not say that it's going to be a less valuable of a person who is collecting the fruit. It's not going to downgrade their moral value or their value as a human. No. That was never meant to be applied that way. If a rich student that comes from a very wealthy family gets into a prestigious university and a student from poverty gets into a prestigious university as well, obviously, the act of getting into a prestigious university is going to be seen as more valuable when done by the person from poverty. But neither of these people in this scenario have their human worth downgraded because they get into a prestigious university. A rich kid going to a prestigious university is not going to be looked at as, oh, that's frowned upon. Well, that was so easy for you, so you're gross. That doesn't make any sense, okay? Where they make this leap to that's where they had you effed up at, because that's not how it's supposed to be applied. So it's a misapplied principle. Now, another fallacy at play here is double standard fallacy, obviously. If you want to say,
it's not impressive. It's not impressive when a woman does it.
Sure, fine, say that. I guess you could use this principle to try to make that statement. Cool, that's your opinion. But that's definitely not what's being said here, is it? It's not just being said. When people pull this out of their godforsaken area and say this, they're not talking about just saying that it's not as impressive, that we don't need to make a big deal out of it when women do it. It's not even saying that it could be looked at as indifferent when a woman does it. It's trying to say that because it comes easy to her, that she should be looked down upon. She makes herself inferior by sleeping around, whereas a man doing the exact same act deserves praise. So in the case of cheating, of course that woman is not going to be the same as a man doing it. It's just not the same because it's so easy for a woman to do that.
Oh, big whoop. She did the thing that's so easy for her to do. What a surprise.
And I don't know what kind of faulty bed that these men seem to be waking up on the wrong side of every single day, the ones that believe like this. But where they are seeing it this way and where they are coming up with this logic and how they are following it to their conclusion, I'm not sure. Because to me, the way it looks, I would never use this logic for one, okay? Because I would never say that it's not the same. I would never say that it's more okay for one to do or worse for one or the other to do. That's just the logic of a fool. It doesn't make any sense. It's bad for both of them equally. It's the same act, okay? It's cheating, it's adultery, or it's just being a dishonest person, it's betrayal, whatever, okay? But the people that are making this claim, if they're saying that it's easier for a woman to sleep with many men than it is for a man to sleep with many women, then wouldn't it be a little more excusable that a woman did something that was easy for her to do, that it's like so easy to do? Like, I mean, can you blame her? Everywhere she turns, there's somebody that'll sleep with her. The man, he had to like really try. He had to like really go out there and try to do that. So isn't that kind of a little bit worse? Doesn't that make it not the same then? And wouldn't that be kind of going against the reason that people are making this claim? The ones that do make this claim? I would think so. But you might say,
Well, they didn't say that one is worse than the other. They just said that it's not the same.
good point, okay? Let's talk about that. Because I wanted to make sure to point this out. A lot of times, you won't hear. You'll hear it more these days because they're real blatant with it. It's getting slapped in your face blatant. It's like,
Wow, your audacity. Sir, where did you find that and how much did it cost? Because, well, you must have paid a pretty penny for that one. My goodness.
but most times in face-to-face situations, in real life situations, the people who believe this way are not going to come right out and say,
Well, when a woman does it, it's worse and it's more gross, and I think it's disgusting, and I look way more down upon it when a woman does it, and that's just, she can't do that. A man can get away with it, but a woman can't.
that's what they're saying. That is ultimately what they mean. But they won't say that. They'll say the safer thing and then just not explain the conclusion of that. So they'll say,
It's not the same. It's just not the same.
and then when you ask them why or how is it not the same, which is going to be one of these that we're going to get into, or they'll just repeat again,
It's just not the same. That's all I'm saying.
no matter what. And you'll notice that people who are operating in these biases and using these fallacies to promote an argument that actually is just being disguised, because what it really is just misogyny and it's just the dehumanization of women. They won't want to be saying that, so they're going to just keep repeating this, and they won't really have a way to say what they actually mean, because they would have to then admit to that, because that's what it is. So if you see these people going in circular arguments where their claim, and then when you ask them what they're getting at, is it still, it's the same, it's the answer. The claim matches the answer to what they're trying to say. If somebody says something and you want to ask them to clarify by saying, well, what does that mean? Therefore, that means what? And then they answer that with the same claim. That's a circular argument. That is a circular reasoning loop, and it means they don't want to reveal the real conclusion that they're coming to and what they're implying there. But what they are implying there is that it is worse when a woman does it, that it's nastier, that it's gross, that she has less of a right to do it, that she deserves to be punished harder, that a man should not be expected to stay with a woman when she does that to him. It's a worse offense. It's going to hurt a man more, but that a woman should excuse it when a man does it, that if he does it just one time, he should probably get some leeway if he's like a good man in every other way. And like if he doesn't like disrespect her all the time, even though that act is blatant disrespect, but if a woman does it, it's nearly unforgivable. Why would you want that woman again? She's directly disrespected herself. She's been defiled. She's been contaminated. So you should be embarrassed to be with her. A man just should not have to forgive her, and so on and so forth. That's what they're saying when they say,
It's not the same.
okay, so let's make sure we're clear on that. Even if they don't come out and say,
I believe those things.
and even if you tell them that that's what they're saying, or you ask them and they say,
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they're not the same.
that's what they mean. Because if they can't tell you what they mean by they're not the same, what else what do you mean? And they can't tell you, because that is what they mean. Okay? And I would love to hear if somebody knows of something else they might be meaning by that. But I'm pretty sure that's what they mean. Okay? I'm certain that's what they mean. Now, the other thing that you'll often hear when you're trying to like squeeze this out of them and get them to explain what the hell they mean when they say something so egregious and outrageous, they might say things like,
I didn't make it that way. Why are you mad at me? I mean, I'm not saying that I believe it should be that way. I'm not saying that I think that about women. I don't even think a man should be doing it. But all I'm saying is that's just the way it is. They're just not the same. I didn't make man and woman that way. We just have to accept it and live in the world where it's that way. I'm sorry.
so when they say things like that, this is particularly a naturalistic fallacy. And it is when someone uses the way things are, the state of things right now in social situations, like social norms, laws, beliefs, things like that. And they use the fact that it is that way right now to explain why that makes it true. And that means that it should be that way, or that we have to accept that it is that way. And that is fact, because that's just the way it is. Now they might try to throw some awesome metaphors at you. They might compare it to something like,
Well, If I'm on a bus and I'm sitting down and then a pregnant woman gets on the bus and there's no seats, I mean, I'm going to be expected to get up and give her my seat because she's pregnant. I mean, she needs more rest. She needs more support. She can't stand as well with the baby. That's just the way it is. That's the natural way it is at that moment. So that's why I have to make that sacrifice. I'm not as important. I'm not as in need of a seat, so I'm not going to get the seat. I'm going to give it to the pregnant woman. That's just the way it is.
And you're just going to look at them and blink your eyes like you're having an internal seizure, because what? Or how can you not tell? That is not a quality metaphor for this situation. We're not talking about someone needing accommodations for a natural way that their body is in a certain state, okay? We don't need seating arrangements. That's not the same thing, okay? Or they might say,
well, men are expected to open doors and pull out chairs and pay for the meals, and that's just the way it is. I mean,
that's also naturalistic fallacy. Okay, just because something is the way it is in a social norm doesn't mean that it should be that way, that it has to be that way, that means that it's right. And I guarantee you that when it comes to cheating on each other, there's no difference in a woman doing it or a man doing it. And just to be more than clear on the reason that this argument is being presented, it's not because I want to argue who should be blamed more or less for cheating, or that anybody should ever cheat in a relationship. That's not the point. And if someone was talking about cheating, I wouldn't be like,
well, women should be able to cheat just as much.
I'm not arguing to be able to cheat. Sometimes the devil's in the details. And oftentimes the stance somebody takes on something and the ideas that they support, the things that people defend, it often reveals a deeper truth about who that person is and about that person's beliefs. It often reveals to you something more. And so the point is not that I think women should be able to cheat just as much as men. The point is that when somebody says something like this, they're saying it in defense of usually the fact that they cheated. And then you're trying to show them, like I said in the beginning, how that would feel if it was done back to them and how they wouldn't like to be treated that way, to help promote and evoke some empathy, since they don't seem to be having any and you're not understanding why that is. And then they hit you with something like this. They completely negate your entire emotions. They just throw it all out the window and they're like,
well, that's not the same, so I don't have to care about that. I don't have to put myself in your shoes. I don't have to imagine how much I've hurt you, because it's not the same. So there's no scenario that I could imagine, because that would be way worse. You can't even compare that. Next.
It's so dismissive and degrading and just dehumanizing. Of course you would feel the exact same way that I feel. Of course, we're both humans. It doesn't matter. And so the reason you would be debating this is because them saying something like that reveals all of the deeper underlying belief about women. This person obviously has a reason that they would say something like that. And so sometimes you have to then pull apart their argument and show them what it's actually based in. And if you don't get anywhere with that, it often just reveals that person does not want to see the truth, or they already see the truth. This stance benefits them. It serves them. It keeps them from having to be accountable. It keeps them in control. It gives them always a foot up on you, and it makes them feel better about themselves for the bad behavior that they're doing. It keeps them safe from ever having you be able to do that back to them and having you be able to say that was the same thing, because that will make you feel like it was way worse. And people like that, they're probably going to continue to do that to you. They're going to continue to do that to everyone that they're with, because that they're literally telling you that they don't think what they did was that bad. But it would be if you did it. And when you uncover something like that, if after a few conversations of you pointing this very obvious logic out to them, they aren't seeing that and going,
oh gosh, I need to really unpack these beliefs and get some change on that in my subconscious mind and really reprogram that, because that's not okay.
Then you should probably not be around someone who thinks that you're less of a human than them, and thinks that when they do something bad to you, it's not as bad as when you do the exact same thing back to them. I mean, enough said, right? That's why this is being talked about. Not because I think that women should be able to cheat just as much as men, okay? It's just making that clear. Now, also under this argument, the same people who believe this way, if they're going to assert this, they're going to have to agree that that means, by saying something like the average man and the average woman, that they're acknowledging that there's also above average men and that there's also below average men. And I think the beginning statements already addressed kind of like all the women. So people who usually say this, they say,
it doesn't matter if you're a below average woman or an above average woman or not even attractive at all.
In their ways of rating women. And remember, these are their beliefs, the people who make these types of claims. Okay, not mine. I'm not rating women. If there is an average man, that means that there would have to exist some above average men. And I think that this group would define those people as the very highly attractive men. When we're talking about this argument, I think it's really focusing in on looks. What would they think about the above average man then? Because the above average man, who is very attractive, can very easily sleep with many women. We know that there's men that are not shy out there about raving about their body count and how some of them say they're in the triple, quadruple digits, and they aren't shy about this. So we know that this happens. If it's an above average man, he can likely easily have many partners. Then wouldn't they say the same thing about above average men? Wouldn't above average men lose value when they sleep with many women? If we're following the logic, that is absolutely yes. That's what that logic would tell us. There's no guessing there. But does that? tend to be the belief, do you think, with these people? I will tell you no, it does not. If not presented with this argument, and if you asked,
Oh, do you believe that above average men lose value when they sleep with many women because they can do it more easily than average men?
these people,
No, they're men.
so that is where this argument falls completely apart. Okay, you absolutely lose. You lose your point, you completely lose the debate at that point, because it's something called motivated reasoning. It reveals that the people saying this, and they're using this justification to back it up, and then it's shown to be that they don't apply it in any other situation besides the one that they're applying it in. That shows that they're obviously operating off a bias and motivated reasoning. Typically, if you're having integrity with the positions that you hold, the most genuine way to form your positions would be to go into something unbiased and to try to do research and gather data and talk to other people and listen to professionals and other people's opinions, talk to people that have this in their life and are affected by it, and just gather all the knowledge that you can. And then because of your findings and what that reveals to you, then you form your position based on facts and knowledge now on the topic, because there's lots of crazy opinions floating around all over the place. I think we know that what people do instead is they pick a position based on a selfish position, something that is beneficial to them because of whatever group they might be a part of or whatever motivation that they have, and they want to defend it, and then they just cling on to any justification that they hear that sounds cool enough, sounds like it probably makes sense.
Well, that sounds like it makes sense, so I'm going to start spouting that off.
And then they start using that as their reason to defend their position because they already picked a position. They're using confirmation bias. The logic isn't logicking. It's not logical. Because if they truly did believe, if this were truly their position, that it is high access and ease of getting physical intimacy, and then someone who takes advantage of that ease and high access, that degrades their value, then they could not deny the men who have the most ease at getting physical intimacy, which would be the very attractive men, the very rich men, the very famous men, people like that, the high status men. They would agree that those men, amongst men, they have the least value. They wouldn't, but they call those the high value men. Okay, so you're ripping your own argument apart. Your logic, it's not sound. It falls apart, and I think that reveals the underlying motivation of where it came from. It's not based on ease of access, ease of obtaining something. This argument was meant to shame women who do the same thing that men are rewarded for, because it's about control, and it's about dehumanization, and it's about keeping women in their place, and it's about egos, and it's about no accountability. And it's very easy to see when you turn the logic this way. Falls right apart. Boom, done. Boom, roasted. Now, before I move on to the next justification, let's dig a little more deeply into what else this justification reveals about the people who use it. Let's talk about what it's like to be a woman who is navigating physical intimacy for herself in a society where there's men out there that are going to often say out of their mouths, "I want you," but then turn around and have their behavior demonstrate, "But I'm gonna look down on you for saying yes. So I'm gonna try to entice you with all of my resources and all of my tips and tricks and tactics and everything I can think of, whatever I need to do to get you to sleep with me, while simultaneously then looking down upon you for then giving in and giving me what I want." That sounds very predator-prey. That doesn't feel settling. That doesn't feel safe. At any given time, women have to always be wary of the person that they're deciding to sleep with, because there's men who believe like this and are going to pursue you, knowing fully well that once you acquiesce and give them what they want, that then they are going to look down on you for that. They are going to see that as an act that now reduced your value. I think this is the most troubling part of people who carry this belief. This is the most troubling thing that it reveals, I think, about them, is that in these situations, every single act of physical intimacy that we're talking about here, that he is going into it fully knowing he is going to be participating in the devaluation of that woman by sleeping with her. This makes the act of physical intimacy, every time it is done by someone who believes this way, it is not the same. Anybody who says anything like that and believes anything like that foundationally makes every act of physical intimacy that they then engage in with the woman pretty predatory.
Run.
In nature, even when consensual, because they're saying by their own doing, their own beliefs and their own assertions, their own contribution to society and their thoughts, but they're supporting and promoting and continuing that every time that they sleep with a woman, they are contributing to her devaluation and bringing her value down. And so then, unless they are doing so with intention to marry that woman, which is not often the case, that's pretty predatory. I mean, it makes a lot of sense why a lot of times I can attest as a woman, physical intimacy can sometimes have this underlying fear and feeling of like this eerie feeling of it being a bit scary, something predatory. I mean, throughout my life, but since as far back as I can remember, since before I had the need for a bra. It's been going on since long before I was a woman. And so this is a constant pursuit and barrage. And it's never ending when that's happening day in and day out as a woman. Men are constantly trying to gain this from you, whether by way of treating you nicely in the beginning, taking you out on dates, being the perfect guy and acting like they want to have more from you. They want to have a relationship with you, whether they're acting or not. But in a sense, a lot of times that doesn't last past when you sleep with them, right? This is why women have to be selective. It just brings everything home, okay? This whole belief system just feeds right into itself because there are so many, and we don't know which ones are which, because sometimes the men who believe this way, they look a lot like the men who don't believe this way in the beginning, and they talk a lot like that. And it only comes to light later, after they've gotten what they wanted. Okay, so when they're all mixed up together out there, it makes it a bit of a scary terrain to navigate. And also when you have a society of people all believing that you have this threshold, be very careful. You only get a few mistakes, before you reach HOE status. And complete contamination, no return, because you're going to be so devalued and defiled that you're just contaminated goods, and there's no going back for you as a woman. You only get a few, so choose wisely, okay? As a woman, you don't get the freedom and the encouragement to go ahead and get out there and have a blast and figure it out like men do. You have a much more judgmental eye on you by the very same men who are believing this way, who are insistently pursuing you. They are insistently, constantly pursuing the same women that they then turn around and say have less value once they have slept with them. Make that sound anything different than predatory, please, somebody. And then your argument, like I said, it just feeds into itself, because we didn't mention in the beginning why. Why is it that it is so easy for a woman to sleep with many men? It's frowned upon, but why is it so easy if they wanted to do that? Is it because women just are easy? They just like to sleep all around? No. I think that when they're making this argument, the people who believe this way think it is because men will sleep with any woman. Men will sleep with anyone who will sleep with them. And they are constantly in this ravenous pursuit of it with anyone they can get their hands on. That's why they're saying that women can sleep with many men very easily. But they are then using something that seems to be more of like a faulty issue with men having low standards and being a little loose, if they believe this way and if that were true, not women. So why then is that spun around to, again, just be used as another justification for why women should be held more accountable for their physical intimacy? Why it's not the same? That makes not a lot of sense when you really break it down. If these are the beliefs that are surrounding us, the pressure that is constantly on us, the viewpoint, how many people of society look at this. Women have a lot of pressure to make the right decision and be selective. They really got to watch out, okay? Because otherwise they're going to get stamped with a scarlet letter. They're going to be declared ho 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 Merry Christmas. But don't ever forget, by the same men who are relentlessly pursuing them. Pressure, 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 pressure.
I want you, I want you, I want you, I want you. Give it to me. I want it. I'll do anything to have it. Buy you flowers, buy you gifts, court you, pretend to love you, be your friend for years and try to get in your pants.
Like, whatever it may be. I mean, there's all this, from a million different directions.
I want it, I want it, I want it, I want it, I want it.
All that pressure. And then at the same time, all the societal pressure from the same people, too. Very same person. Should be the same person that you lay down with. There's also going to judge you and look down upon you for giving them exactly what they begged for. And I want to ask you, does that sound like a very safe, settling environment to be navigating physical intimacy in? Does that promote trust and safety? These beliefs are very obviously simply rooted in the dehumanization of women, and they don't keep women safe. They don't consider women in the equation. They are all aimed to be dominant over women, superior over women, to resist accountability for bad behavior on these men's end, and shame and force accountability towards women. These beliefs aim to blame women for the very problems that some of these beliefs created. And it's all at the end of the day about control, selfishness, ego, and the dehumanization of women. Because I want to ask you, so while I did this research, I came to this very alarming conclusion, this very alarming fact. And I found this conclusion by way of asking myself this question. What example can you think of in society? Any other example? Any single other example that you are aware of, or that you, let's say you personally participate in? Give me any example where you participate in an activity. You go into this activity already knowing that by doing so, you are going to raise your value as a person, your respectability, your worth, while simultaneously decreasing the value and worth of the person that is going to be directly participating in the activity with you at the same time. And you know this before you go and do it, and then you still go and do that. Do you ever do that in any situation? Can you think of any situation that is like that besides very blatant scams or activities or situations where someone has direct malicious intent to scam or be predatory towards the other person who stands to be devalued, who stands to lose while you gain? What other situation does that happen in where it's not predatory or it's not a scam? I will tell you, I spent hours looking for one, okay? I really tried hard to find something where there's any other dynamic like this, and there is not one that exists that is not a blatant scam or something with malicious intent. So there you go. And we're talking about an act of physical intimacy where this is happening. These beliefs are not just how it is. Anytime you find yourself in an argument with someone, in a debate with someone, where their stance is that two human beings should not be treated as equal for some ridiculous logic that they've come up with, while you are simply arguing on the other side, not that the same thing but flipped the other way to benefit you, but just literally for...
It should be equal. No, it should be exactly the same. It's equal. I'm a human being.
In case you need to remind these men.
So no, I think it should be equal. There's no difference. The differences that are seeming to be in place are because of societal conditioning and misogyny. And you're actively participating in promoting a belief that keeps that alive.
I think it's pretty black and white, guys, and how anyone carrying these beliefs and saying these things going around,
Well, it's just not the same.
can't see that. Well, then I know that there's either strong underlying motivators in place, and they do see that, they're just promoting it because it benefits them, or there is a heavy load of cognitive dissonance sitting on their brain and blocking their eyes. And I'd like to do as much as I can do to contribute to the removal of those blindfolds, if possible, because it's not right. Let's move on to justification number 2. Heavy hitter number 2, this infuriating argument that I hear in some form. I've heard many times. I've heard it recently. It was very disappointing. And that is, women sleeping around, cheating, dating around, blah, 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 is not the same as a man doing it. And that is because the woman is the receiver and the man is the giver. Or the woman has to take everything into her body. It's going inside her body, whereas nothing's going inside the man's body. So it's not the same. Okay, that one, that's it. Okay, so those making this argument are obviously speaking about the mechanics of the two genders' anatomies and the method by which the two engage in physical intimacy. And so what I am assuming that they would be meaning by what the woman is taking into her body, let's be clear, the woman is taking in the eggplant into her peach. And I would also believe that sometimes they are referring to the fluids that are going somewhere. So they would be going into the woman's body, not into the man's body, which we'll get to that. They very confidently say this at times. I'm pretty sure we can talk about this seminal fluid. Okay, that's what we're talking about. That's what's going into her body, not in the man's. Okay, the man is scot-free. Everything's on the outside, and he's not taking anything into his body. So it's like, it's just not as, it's not the same. Now, again, the same rules apply here. The same implications apply here. They're not just saying it's not the same. They are saying it's more gross when a woman does it. It's disgusting. It makes her contaminated. All of that. That is what is being implied here. Because, I mean, to say it's not the same, again, we're not saying therefore what. And they might not say it, but that's what they mean. Okay? So let's break down and go through some of the ways that they're going to justify this. Or they're going to explain what they mean when they say this is not the same. And how this piece of proof explains that. Because if you've ever been on the receiving end of this argument, often happens in the case when, like I said, you're trying to put them in your shoes and then they hit you with,
It's not the same. It's not the same.
and it can be infuriating. So sometimes when you say,
Please elaborate. Please elaborate why.
they might give you a very basic overview of the male and female anatomy that you're like,
Okay, thank you for that. I made it through 4th grade. Thank you.
and then you'll still be like,
Sir, are you going to get to why it's not the same? What we're talking about here? Which is betrayal, please?
and they will then probably go to this next piece of supporting evidence, okay? So one common tactic that people who believe this way often pull out of their regurgitated bag of massage chimney will be some brilliant metaphor that uses some type of inanimate object to really drive their point home, okay? Some common examples of this that we might have heard, that we probably have heard, is the key in the lock, okay? We love this one. A key that unlocks many locks is a master key, but a lock that can be unlocked by many keys is just a broken lock. Heavy hitter, really hits home. It's amazing. It all makes sense now. Got it. If I were made of metal, like maybe if I were the Tin Man, I might understand. I might be able to relate to that a little bit better, maybe, but I'm not, so. And then there was this spectacular one I heard recently, and that was,
if you have a glass of water and a bunch of people stick their finger in that glass of water, are you going to want to drink it?
you know, probably not. I don't think I would. Wouldn't want to drink that glass of water. That's correct. I also wouldn't want that finger to touch me if it's been dipping in a lot of random people's water glasses, though, you know, so I mean, just saying. So this logic is not only not sound, but it's also just highly insulting when you realize what they're getting at. And to be brutally honest, it's quite lacking in intelligence to offer up an argument such as this one when you are defending this position. And I will tell you why. Because if you are trying to assert that you're not dehumanizing women, you're not dehumanizing women. You're just pointing out the very true fact that it's just not the same. You're not dehumanizing women. Why would you do that? You love women, right? That's your position. The people that are saying this, sometimes I think they're very blatant about it, but the ones that aren't.
I don't think women are less of humans. I love women.
They swear it. They swear it. So to prove this, that they're not dehumanizing women, they consult a metaphor that they so confidently present with their chests, okay, where they are comparing a woman to an inanimate object, also known as blatant and straightforward objectification, guys, to really drive their point home, okay? Come on now. I mean, that's just so ironic to me. Scholarly job on that one. I mean, this one just makes my point for me. I really don't even have to do any of the heavy lifting. You just proved it when you say something like that. Okay, we're not a glass of water. We're not a lock. We are human beings with complex emotions and many different moving parts. We are alive. We are conscious beings. So, yikes. The second thing that is wrong with this argument is that mechanics of someone or mechanics of physical intimacy, they don't negate morality or inflate it for anybody. So while yes, we biologically, during physical intimacy between a heterosexual male and female, the woman is the receiver. Something is going into her body, meaning the body part of the man, male anatomy, as well as his seminal fluid at times. But equating the equipment that one gender uses during physical intimacy to somehow being related to moral value or personal worth is where it just takes a strong turn into dehumanization, like Speed Racer, crash, dead on arrival, bad. So let's explore why it is, if not just blatant misogyny, that the female anatomy is so much more gross after physical intimacy than the male anatomy. Some that are making this argument might say it's mostly centering around the fact that the female anatomy is contaminated after the act.
Why? 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 Why?
And if that is true, let's explore that. So what is it that is contaminating the female anatomy during physical intimacy? If it is contaminated, then you are also agreeing that the male anatomy and or seminal fluid are contaminants, because that is what is entering. That's essentially what you're saying. If the entrance of those things is what makes her contaminated, then those are considered contaminants by you, right? So if I were to present men who believe this way with these questions, let's discuss what their answers would be. If you, as a man, sleep with a woman daily for 2 weeks, is she then disgusting or contaminated based on only those 2 weeks that you've had with her? I would assume that they would say no unless they hate themselves. Ouch! I don't think so, right? Okay, so in that case, we can immediately observe that the people who believe this way don't actually think that in general, the male anatomy or the fluids that come out of it during physical intimacy are contaminants in general, because they would not dismiss their own as being a contaminant. They would see it as a contaminant all around. Because, you know, there are several other bodily fluids that exist, many more, one being urine. I think we can all agree if something is peed on, it's probably contaminated. It needs to be washed. Okay, it doesn't change if you're the one that peed on it. That's still a contaminant. It's urine. But seminal fluid, why such a contaminant? We can assume that it's only a contaminant in the minds of these men when it is not coming out of their own body. Okay, so fine. Let's roll with that then. So if that's the case, what about this? What if a woman is dating multiple people at one time, and she has her main partner, I guess. What if she's sleeping with multiple other men, but all the other men, she's always using protection, okay? So no fluids are contaminating her, okay? So if the man is doing the same thing behind her back, for the men who would say this, now is it the same? I can't properly answer for them, but I can bet that their answer would be no, it's not the same, because it's just not the same when a woman does it, even if she does use protection with all the other partners. This is hypothetical, so eliminate the possibility that it could break or there could be something that goes wrong. Let's talk about why someone would be so hung up on seminal fluid as such a contaminant. Why is seminal fluid any more of a contaminant or such a toxin? Now, due to simply context clues and experiencing this type of belief so many times, being observant, really listening to the language that is used, I have come to, no pun intended.
Stop now!
Stop. Pause. I have been brought to understanding that it does have something to do with the idea of another man's fluids inside the girl that you claim as yours, okay? And I can understand that to an extent. Where it doesn't fly is when then you start comparing that to you putting your own body part into another woman's body and releasing your own fluid or getting her fluids all over you.
Jesus, Jesus, Jesus!
So, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to do this portion without being too crude because I didn't mean this to be some scandalous video with such racy content, but I mean, I'm just trying to describe and get down to the nitty-gritty about what could possibly promote someone to make this claim and think that it makes any sense. And to do that, you really have to dig into the details, which they're not willing to do. And that's why they continue to get away with making these claims. Okay? So I'm trying to keep it as clean as possible. Okay? So that's where it falls apart because I mean, if you're gonna say one is gross, I get it. It's not necessarily gross, it's just revolting to you because I want to think, and I don't think this is the thing that is most at play in this situation, but I would like to think, and I know why it feels this way from my end or from the person's side that doesn't have this belief. It's because you love that person, and it's jealousy because when something that you have and that you love is threatened, you're going to feel jealous about that. You feel at risk to lose that. You feel like this act between the two of you is special and sacred, okay? So that's why it hurts when someone does that. That's why it makes you feel disgusted because you feel like sharing your body with this person is a sacred act and it's something special and something very intimate and bonding of the two of you. And that's all good and gravy. That's perfectly fine when it goes both ways. See, the problem with this is that jealousy behind the person then that doesn't have these beliefs is motivated by that understanding, that commitment that goes both ways. It is equal. They expect it to be equal, so it's warranted. And that is what you agree upon when you enter into a monogamous committed relationship or an exclusive dating situation or a marriage, okay? But what the people who are promoting this belief believe, or what is motivating that jealousy on their end, is control and ownership and superiority because they believe it should be allowed to go only one way. They believe that they can get away with breaking that once in a while and it's not really that bad because like they're not letting anything go inside of their body and contaminate them. Plot twist. They are. But their woman, the person they own and have control over and need dominance over and need to have only to themselves, she does that. That's absolutely disgusting and revolting and he would not have her. So when you break it down, it's not about jealousy because of a mutual agreement of love and connection and commitment. It's about jealousy that this person believes that they are allowed to have and warranted to have, but they completely absolve themselves of having to be responsible to not evoke that same jealousy from the other side. She doesn't get a right to feel that way, but they know that she has the right because they don't do this right in front of her. They don't tell her. They want to do it in secrecy. They want to do it behind her back, so they know it's wrong. But deep down, the reason this will come out is because they think they can keep doing it, and they tell themselves they can keep doing it. They would never let it be done to them because they keep saying it's just not the same. But when you dig in, it is absolutely the same, okay? Because it's not the seminal fluid. That is just something that they have logically put as a tangible in their mind to help them justify what is more gross about it. Because seminal fluid is just another bodily fluid. We exchange bodily fluids often. Throughout life, we do that, okay? And men do take other bodily fluids into their bodies. They take other people's saliva into their bodies. They also take vaginal fluid into their bodies. Heyo. Oh. Fun fact. So I'm not sure where the sex education class went wrong here, but They do. They definitely take it into their bodies when they are engaging in physical intimacy with a woman. So I'm not sure why they don't understand that to make this argument. Okay? They are definitely taking something into their bodies. And especially when they kiss, they're taking something into their bodies. It's really ridiculous. A man who says this, who says,
well, nothing goes into the man's body. Everything just goes into the woman's body. That's why it's not the same.
okay, well, then why aren't you making this big deal out of making out? Men make out with women. Women make out with men. When you're making out, the process of making out is that a person, I'm sorry, once again, we're adults. Let's do this, okay? This is so stupid. All right. When you're making out, one tongue goes into the other person's mouth and vice versa, okay? You put your tongues in each other's mouths, okay? Inside your mouth, that's inside your body, right? So someone else's body part going inside your body. Boom, roasted. Also, there's an exchange of fluids. One person's saliva is going into the other person's mouth, and it's going both ways. So guess what? Men, when they're making out, they're taking something into their body. Why are you not all up in arms about making out? Why isn't that as severe and so disgusting and so revolting and just not the same? Because essentially that would be the same, because it's going to go both ways. So that's why they can't make that argument. But it kind of rips apart their other argument, because fluids are going into their body. Body parts are going inside their body. And why is saliva so much different than a female anatomy's fluids and a male anatomy's fluids? It's a bodily fluid. It has the ability mouth to mouth. Saliva can transmit STIs, STDs, just the same. I think the mouth is a very similar place biologically, somewhat, to the female anatomy.
Damn it, I said stop!
And it may sound crude, but just, I mean, it's a moist opening, okay? And that's what it is. And so, I mean, what's the difference? I know there's a lot of differences because of what they function as. But I mean, hence oral physical intimacy for a man. I mean, he seems to think it's quite similar, right? I mean, come on. So why is it just in that context when it's something entering a woman's body and when it's that fluid going into a woman's body, what is so much more terrible about that? The answer is nothing. It is just an argument and a false cover-up for what is really rooted in, which is just simply control, lack of accountability, ego, pride, domination, all of that. Once again, dehumanization of women, clearly, because it doesn't apply back both ways. It doesn't apply to things that are actually the same. And in case you didn't hear me before, men do actually take in female anatomy fluids while during the process of intercourse, in case you didn't know, okay? They do. Hence how they get STDs, how they get STIs. Hello, they do. Okay, so like, I don't understand. We have lots of bodily fluids. We have sweat, we have urine, we have blood, we have the male anatomy and the female anatomy's fluids, all of those. What is it about seminal fluid that gives men who believe this way a right to make that such a number one toxin and complete contaminant of a woman? Also failing to consider that seminal fluid is a dire life fluid that is absolutely essential in creating human beings. How could it be a contaminant? It can't be a contaminant. It's absolutely necessary for our existence. It's the process of life. It's supposed to go there. Now, I understand that people are not always engaging in physical intimacy to reproduce. I get that. But the purpose of seminal fluid, it is to reproduce. So it cannot be a contaminant when it is being deposited in the exact place that it is meant to go for that process, the exact process that is necessary to make a human being. It's not contaminating her. We were made that way. We are made to work that way. So it literally cannot be a contaminant. Now, I understand in the context of sexually transmitted diseases or sexually transmitted infections, it could be contaminated. I understand that. But so can the fluid that is within a woman. It also can have that. And so can blood. Scientifically, comparing the two fluids, that of a female anatomy and that of the male anatomy, there's nothing biologically more contaminating about seminal fluid than vaginal fluid. Nothing. So why is it that a man who is getting vaginal fluid into his body every time he sleeps around, not the same as a woman having that in her body? She's sleeping with multiple people. Why is it being said that that's not the same? Why is semen such disgusting toxin? And let's be clear also. Think about this. We know that it's not just the physical presence of seminal. That's not what is grossing men out. That's not what is not the same. Because I think they very well know that just because the fluid enters the woman's body, it's not there forever. Science and biology tells us that seminal fluid remains inside the woman's body for a maximum of about 5 days. And that's maximum. Most of the time, I would think, it's not physically present there. So if you're thinking about a woman who has slept with someone prior. The men that say this are not complaining about the presence of physical seminal fluid being what is so gross about it, unless they're sleeping with her within the same few days, right? No, I think we know that the men that say this are upset about the seminal fluid that has been inside the woman's body in her entire life, like at any time. Because I think we know that men who say this usually have some hang up about that woman's past before she ever met him, and that matters. And I think in certain contexts, again, that can matter on both ends, and two people need to be on the same page about that, okay? It's perfectly fine to say,
I don't want to be with someone who has been with many people.
but the issue arises when it's people who have been with many other people, and then they don't want someone who has been with many other people. Because then you're just a hypocrite. That's what that's called. You're a hypocrite, and you're a contradiction to yourself, and you're, again, promoting an imbalance. You're expecting something that you yourself cannot even hold yourself up to, and then you're making excuses and finding justifications for why that standard does not apply to you. And that's never going to fly. That's never going to fly. And if you try to argue for why it should, biologically, by saying mechanics arguments about the gender's anatomy, like this one, you are simply just trying to defend your underlying misogyny to the ground and the dehumanization of women, because that's what it is. You believe that you should not be held to the same standard that you want to hold women to, and that's just not going to fly. That doesn't fly either way. If a woman has been with many partners, then she also does not have a right to be a hypocrite. It goes both ways. See, the people that are arguing against this belief, they're not arguing for it to be flipped the other direction. They're not arguing that
I should be able to do that. Women should be able to sleep around and have their male partner not have slept around.
No, simply just should be a match for the two to decide by themselves. You can't have a preference in that area if you yourself don't meet that standard. You can, but more power to whoever decides to be with you with those types of ideas, because that's idiotic. That's hypocritical. And who wants to be with a hypocrite? Because I would bet you that that's not the only area that it applies to. Who wants to be with a hypocrite? It matters on a grander scale when someone has these ideologies. It goes deeper. They see you as inferior. They want to hold you to a standard that they don't hold themselves to. It's problematic in so many ways. It extends out. It's just a little symptom, a little hint, a little portion of a grand, huge problem that you will not be happy being a part of. That is why this is so important. It largely reveals the type of person this is. So it's not actually physical contamination that we're talking about here, is it? It is not about physical biology that we're putting it down to here. They're trying to make the claim that it's because of physical deposit into the female body. Something about going inside the female body that means it's physical. So they're saying physically or biologically, that is changing something about the woman that is irreversible, and that makes her contaminated, makes it worse, makes it a worse act, a more disgusting act, more revolting, more unforgivable. But that doesn't seem to be the case when you break it down like that. So it's something else. It's something else. And now, unfortunately, even after all of this sound logic, all of this evidence, there will still be some men who believe this way, that are quite a few, probably most of them, that will still defend this logic and say,
No, it's still just not the same. Sorry. I don't care what you said. It's not the same.
and they might try to reach for something ridiculous like,
Well, yeah, the fluid goes into our body, but it's not as much, and it doesn't go in as far, and it doesn't stay there as long.
but do you really want to be that guy that makes that pathetic argument? I mean, it will happen abundantly. I just wish someone who feels that way would see this and really ask themselves,
Do you really want to be that guy?
I'm going to defend to the death, down to the nitty-gritty, down to the ground, dehumanizing women based on the amount or the distance or how long a fluid stays. When at the end of the day we know it's not about the fluid. It's not about the fluid. And it's not about some damage that is caused because something goes inside her body. Things go inside the man's body too. I think we know what it's about. The more people who can just embrace the flat and obvious truth of this, a better world we will be living in, where people can get back to the basic principle of treat people the way that you want to be treated. And the problem is that if you don't think that applies here somehow, and you're excusing yourself from that principle somehow when it comes to the woman that you are with, then maybe you really need to look at very closely why you do not see her as people.
You didn't have to press it to my tempo. You could have shot it up into the air. I know you hate when I'm so damn judgmental, but I don't like when you never play fair. Cause I was giving all of my heart to you. I made it so damn easy for you, but you was living in your tunnel view.